Welcome to Module 2. In this module, I want to talk to you about the essentials for being or finding the right caregiver. And in some cases, such as my own, you might have both situations in your life. For us, we decided to be the caregiver for my mother. And then as she progressed and got to a point where it was just too much for us and we didn't have the time or the resources to really care for her properly, we found a home for her. So there are many options to caregiving. And in this first lesson, I'm going to talk to you about what you need to expect if you decide to be the caregiver for your loved one. So my personal experience was when we brought my mother in to live with us, we did not know much about what to expect. I knew what Alzheimer's looked like and I knew what the memory loss looked like, but where my mom's health was concerned, when we brought her to us, her memory was so bad, and what we experienced was a lot of anger and a lot of resistance and a lot of threats that she wanted to go back home, a lot of tears. There's a lot of confusion that takes place with someone who's even in the mid stages of cognitive decline with Alzheimer's. They still have plenty of memories intact, but they are struggling to put those memories in the proper order. And so for us, it was, she knew her parents were dead. She knew that she had lived in her parents' home, but she had forgotten the middle part. She had forgotten my life. She had forgotten having me. She knew I was her daughter. She would often say, I gave birth to you, but she couldn't remember the experience anymore. And so it was, really trying to understand what she was going through and the confusion that she was feeling through that. So that's something that you may have to expect. If you bring your loved one into your home, it's a huge change of environment, especially if they've lived in the same place for the majority of their life, which my mother had. She was born in South Carolina, but spent 68 years almost in North Carolina in the same city. So she didn't know any different. But what happened when we brought her to Colorado was a huge confusion period. She had no idea how far she was from where she originally lived. She thought she could just get on the road and walk or get in her car and drive. And, we just tried to keep it as lighthearted as possible. And I'll be completely honest with you, in the very beginning, I had short patience. My husband was the saint in that relationship because he had so much patience with her and so much love and kindness toward her that he was able to help me take a step back and see my own personal faults, because it was so easy for any kind of a childhood memory or trauma to come back into my head, and I would just want to lash out. I did not lash out at her personally, but I could definitely see the irritation that I was experiencing and just dealing with her on a day-to-day basis. And I have to tell you, if you're the caregiver for someone with Alzheimer's, as they decline, it's like having an infant who is incapable of being taught. So think about that for just a second. It is like having a little kid who's going to ask your permission for everything, ask you if they're doing things right or wrong, and then they're going to ask you again in 20 seconds because they can't remember the answer that you gave them. And there's no training options. You cannot teach somebody with Alzheimer's because they can't remember. At this stage in my mom's disease, she's like 10-second Tom from 50 First Dates, but it's more like 3 seconds. You tell her something and it's gone just like that. So as the disease progresses, the caregiving gets a little more challenging, but I will say this, because of the research that I did, which is why I created the prevention reversal course, I was able to completely reverse her diabetes with the help of my husband, of course, and we were able to get her off of all of her medications and slow the progress of her disease. So there is definitely hope, but it's really important that you understand, depending on the level of Alzheimer's that person has, you may be able to completely reverse them so that they can live on their own again. But if they're like my mom and hers was alcohol induced and there's so much brain damage there, she was never going to be able to live independently again. We knew that she would be with us indefinitely or in a home. And unfortunately, COVID hit, which made her have to be indoors all the time. And we couldn't socialize her, which is a huge impact on memory. We couldn't get her out to do any activities. The best we could do was get her to go for a walk. We still managed her diet, but it just, she sat in front of a television. And that's one of the biggest detriments to your brain, is to just sit in front of a TV. So it was a challenge, and she declined in a year's time to a point where we couldn't really do much with her. It was rough. It was hard. So if you choose to be the caregiver, some of the things that you really need to understand are the confusion that's going to come. There's probably going to be anger. There's going to be a lot of sadness. My mom knew she had Alzheimer's, and it made her cry a lot because she didn't want to be sick. This was in the phase when she understood that she had started to lose her memory. She didn't want to be sick. And so she would cry a lot, and we would cry together with her, and she would apologize a lot because she felt like a huge burden on us. And we just kept having to reiterate to her, that we loved her and wanted to help her. And that's why we were doing what we were doing. So lots of emotion. If you choose to bring someone into your home or move into their home and care for them, even if you move into their home, it's still a disruption to what they're used to. You're going to see a lot of emotion. And it's really important that you understand that. It's really important that you try not to show any kind of reaction to that, because they don't understand. In front of them, if you need to cry in your room, cry in your shower, experience those emotions without them knowing that you're experiencing them, because they need to feel like everything is okay. The more we show emotion in front of someone who has Alzheimer's, the more reactivity we're going to get from that person who has Alzheimer's. So calm, stable, regulated behavior is really, really important. And we see that more with her now as she continues to progress. She gets really agitated now when we're visiting with her if we're hyper. And then she's really unkind. So we've learned that we have to just be really calm and mellow when we're around her. And that's not her personality. My mother was a party girl. She loved high energy all the time. So just taking time to really pay attention to their reaction to you in all situations, and then modify your behavior, because you can't modify their behavior. You can't change their behavior. It's going to change as they progress, but you can't make them learn or change anything. That only agitates and irritates them. So that is my biggest lesson that I can give you for how to deal with them if you choose to be the caregiver. The next lesson will be on kind of in-home changes you may need to incorporate in order to make it a smooth transition. I'll see you there.